And welcome, everybody. We have already a couple of people joining the stream, so thanks for joining us. Myself and my colleague Ramsha, who is here with me to talk to you about some AI stuff. I'm Christian, I'm your host for today, and the recurring viewer will know that this is rather kind of an interactive style fireside chat thing than us just dumping our knowledge on you. But if you prefer it that way, we can do that too. So today we're going to talk to some AI, but before we do that, Ramsha, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you? What are you doing?
Thanks, Christian. So I am a consultant, I guess, in the last 13 years. That's what I've done. But at the end of the day, last year, I got my ServiceNow CMA, which is exciting. But I have done a ton of stuff around the ServiceNow ecosystem for the last 13 years, functional work, technical work, architectural work, custom work, doing a more product owner role, as well as more technical developer role and analyst and platform owner. So I like to say I'm a generalist when it comes to ServiceNow, I think. So I won't go super deep into everything, but I will know enough to be able to understand what we're talking about, or at least know where to go to learn more.
That's sometimes equally important.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about some AI topics, a hot topic over the last couple of years, actually, and not only in the positive way. We're trying to take the positive stuff that is on our favorite platform, ServiceNow, And let's break that down a little and try to take fear away from people to actually touch it. I think the fact that lots of people don't know what it is, what it does, and how it actually works, there's a lot of misconceptions. And we're here to talk to you about that and try to take the fear away, hopefully. And if not, explain how to handle it. Although the medication is not something that we're talking about here.
Yeah, and as always, the answer is usually somewhere in the middle. So
it is, and it's important, I think, especially in the time of buzzwords and just general marketing hype around AI, to kind of get down to the basics and talk about what can you actually do with it. There's a lot of promises, and that is my first very direct and maybe a little provocative statement. And for the people who are in chat, I would like your opinion as well. Ramsha, do you think AI is intelligent?
I think it is helpful. I have yet to see it be truly intelligent. I think it is helping us be more expedient, more efficient. But I do think it has the capability to get there, without going into a philosophical conversation about what intelligence is and all of that.
Right. I see it a little bit more technical myself. I think it's not intelligent. It can calculate very well. It's statistics at the end of the day. For me, it's and that's all the problem with the reasoning and why we have hallucinations and stuff, right? Because it's statistical reasoning and it's not really understanding. Yeah. But that's my personal view on these things. Do we have the potential to get there? Yes. Am I afraid of that day? I saw that movie. It didn't end well for humanity. So yes. All right. With that being said, let's dive in and take a little bit of a look back to make sure that we grasp the full extent of what does ServiceNow do with AI and where does it come from. I think the first iteration where we talked about some level of intelligence or AI capabilities was the machine learning stuff, the supervised machine learning stuff that came out when, I think, in the late 2010s, 17, 18.
I would think, yes. Yeah.
Kingston release, I believe. Yeah, we still have it in there. So the machine learning stuff is still in there and it's still being used. Frank, of course not. It's probability text calculation engine based on broad lake of information. There you go. And then we have Piotr Krajewski here. AI is intelligent as fundamentals on the fundamentals on which it is built. Yeah, I can. Yeah, there's some truth to that.
Yeah, I mean that opens the big can of worms of like, you know, what
do
data
you actually feed
exactly? What do you feed it? Right? It's only as good as what you feed it.
Exactly, and we will be getting to the data topic. There is something about the data because after all, and I think this is what Ramsha already mentioned. It doesn't do magic. It doesn't do magic. You need to be able to feed it some stuff. Right. So let's go back to our where do we come from? We had the machine learning. We had the what was it called? Task intelligence came in. Yep. And which of these things did you actually use ever?
Predictive intelligence, quite a bit, I think, when it came out, especially for clients with bigger environments, you know, and bigger user bases where you have a lot of data for it to learn from and help them classify, assign, that kind of stuff, I think is quite helpful. I also used, now I can't remember what it's called, but this thing that did like text analytics, essentially.
Is it the document intelligence that you mean?
No, it was now I can't remember what it is, but we used it for like analyzing descriptions of different tickets to understand, for example, a lot of environments have general requests, which, is sort of a thing that's been around for a long time in IT in general. But to start analyzing and getting rid of that, you want to understand what are the patterns of what people are actually asking about and what gets resolved faster or not. And so essentially, it was like a layered implementation where you start using this analytics thing to understand what are people asking about without having to do like keyword searches and things like that. And then you apply predictive intelligence to say, okay, now we can actually start routing it, or even breaking it down at the request level to say where it should go. Yeah, it also did fancy things like create a word cloud, but it was based on the same engine, so it was technically still AI at the time.
Yeah, I didn't get that lucky. Most customers that I was involved with, they shied away from the license costs of these things. And they didn't have these large environments because you needed quite a bit of data. I think the threshold was like cluster sizes of 30,000.
30,000, yeah.
Yeah, and that was not necessarily something that they had a lot of in these days. And the instances used to be a bit smaller for most customers in Switzerland, at least.
That's true. I only saw it also with more like of the international customers. Not like the local ones.
So. Right. And then we started to move a little bit further. It was towards, I think, 2018, 2019, when the virtual agent was all the rager. I didn't particularly like the virtual agent because of it was very rigid, and you had to basically build all your dialogue options already. It felt a little bit like an old school kind of text-based adventure that you needed to run through.
Yeah, that never felt like AI to me. Like, no, at least the predictive intelligence was cool. This was like touted as a cool thing, but it was never intelligent or any level of like actual decision making it was doing based on statistics or anything.
And the virtual agent itself was not, but there was a capability in there that actually started to show language understanding, and that was the NLU engine, where you would kind of start feeding it utterances, and it would work with these things. But even that, it was very basic and not a whole lot of.
I saw multiple clients implement it, and then it just wasn't as good because nobody bothered to maintain the back end of the intents and the utterances and actually, keep it up to date.
And I think it was quite interesting that they came out like in the late 2010s with these kind of features. I remember at the time I was working with a large bank on the more customer side of things, and I was part of the product advisory council, the PAC thing. And they sent me to a PAC meeting, which would happen basically pre-conference at the Knowledge. So I was sitting there. It was 2018 or 2019. I don't remember which of these years. And I was sitting there with a couple of people from companies like Disney and these kind of sizes. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, and we are doing this AI initiative." And I was like, "Okay, but you don't have it yet. You're talking about this here, while others are already bringing it to market." So I felt back in the day that ServiceNow was kind of late to the party with these products. But then it was a little bit in my early years of consulting, which was the early 2020s. It was a bit lame what we had AI search.
Yeah, true.
And we had document intelligence, the one that I mentioned earlier, where you had like the OCR part and matching things in fields, things like that. I'm not sure if you have ever worked with that.
No, the OCR piece, not in ServiceNow, but
right.
Yeah.
And then I think it was 2023 when we started having the first really AI capabilities in the platform. And I remember when I joined with your team back in the day, I was on an event where everyone was like, "Oh yeah, ServiceNow, Now Assist." That was the first kind of really tangible use cases that we had where the LLM would be consumable on the platform.
Yeah, I think, yeah, because when it came out, a lot of people asked about it. It was just like, it was such a release with all this hype, but it was very
basic.
Yeah, like it just wasn't at a level where you were like, oh, I know exactly what to do with this, and it will give me my money's worth. Like it just wasn't clear. I
I
think
think
there
it was I think it was the latter in
Yeah.
particular. I think it was kind of clear what you do with it. You know, it's clear that what summarization does,
Yeah.
and certain skills. I mean, even today, if you look into the skills list, they are very deterministic. This is what you do. You take this, you take all your input, throw it into the LLM, and get something out of it that does basically tell you what it is. And these things are still there. And I am, and here we get a little bit into the next topic that I don't want to touch just yet, but just I think they are still valuable. I just don't think that back in the day they justified the cost that you would need to bring up as a
they still
business
don't.
case.
Yeah, like the out of the box pre-built like skills, the really basic ones that you can just go like turn on, are still not the ones that are actually making it worth the money, I think.
Well, not by themselves.
Not by themselves, exactly.
I wouldn't. It might be different with the new license model. I haven't checked into that, honestly. But if you have them anyways, and you just go with the assists that they consume, and you utilize them where they make sense, they could actually provide their value. Like let's say I have one customer where we're thinking about deploying some analysis skills, and summarization comes to mind because it's super easy to deploy. So you don't have any development costs that you throw in there, right? If you find a proper pattern where you can say, okay, now it doesn't make sense in these cases, like say a long list of reassignments, and you make the skill available for these kind of cases, your familiarization with the content of 50 reassigns, it's over dramatic, obviously, but let's say you have 20 reassigns in there, and you can familiarize yourself in like click 2-minute summarization versus I need to read the whole damn thing. That could be that's why I'm saying very targeted.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the bigger picture, it needs to add up enough of those small, tiny use cases
Exactly.
for it to actually provide that value. And I still don't know that I have seen an environment where just the out-of-the-box skills are providing the full value.
And they are rather limited in what they can do. And that brings us to where we went when I first thought, okay, now we're getting into something viable that might actually do the thing. And there was the expansion when we were able to be able to start the customization of the skills, the skill builder kit. That actually, I think, when you can make a copy of an existing skill and build upon it. Right, that makes sense. As an example, I think we just proposed to a client for CI summarization. That's very basic, right? But if you copy it and you add additional input, bring more context to it, all of a sudden you have some value because you can, for example, ingest the relationships into the summarization as well, which is out of the box not possible.
Yeah.
Right. And that came with the skill builder kit in I think it was 24 or 25. Yeah. I think it was 24, late 24, and then everything went crazy and all hell broke loose with the Zurich release and the agentic engine. where we actually were able to do what we were supposed to be doing with AI.
Yeah. And I think going to that is where most environmentalists actually start seeing value at the end of the day, is to truly start reducing all of the like repetitive things that we don't need to do every day as IT or as business.
Right. There's one thing, and we can stay on this topic already. The agentic flows in ServiceNow by themselves are obviously very focused on ServiceNow as a platform.
Yeah.
And while we do have the A2A and MCP supports, the collaboration with other platforms in an enterprise environment is obviously from the ServiceNow platform still a bit difficult topic. That's where other things come in, namely MoveWorks.
Yeah. I mean, I think now, and even from last year, I think we know that it has to work with more than just ServiceNow. Like that's where ultimately it's just not all going to be within the system. And I think this is where even like MoveWorks is one part of it, I think, the conversational, and then there's also like the other acquisitions, right, with the Armis and Veza and whatever.
Yeah.
But so for example, if I'm looking at it from the perspective of like a CIO or a CTO, right, of an organization that's trying to understand, okay, am I investing in ServiceNow AI or am I investing in AI? Right, and what benefit is it going to have for me? And I think that's the distinction that needs to be made in terms of what you want to do with it. But the value is at the bigger level, and that's where you need to start assessing it, because just paying for ServiceNow AI is going to help you reduce, like, here's all the people that are on ServiceNow to help them do their work faster and whatever work is on ServiceNow. But at the end of the day, that's very limited in scope, right? And the impact of AI is much broader. So where it needs to connect and like that, how you build that overall architecture, I think is so important to define, okay, we can orchestrate through here, but HR workflows, for example, can be orchestrated with these couple of things in the ecosystem. And then IT workflows will be orchestrated through these other tools. And everything will also go through this orchestration layer or this monitoring layer and things like that. Like that level is, to me, yet to come from anywhere. When it relates to like, how does it work together at the enterprise? How does it all work together to actually start properly agentifying?
But the paradigm is the same. If I remember, and you might remember, I painted like this picture that we had back in the day, where you have your orchestrator, but the agents and the agentic flows themselves that were focused, call them agents, or I think ServiceNow calls them AI workers now, which is essentially a persona that does a job.
Oh, okay.
Right? That's what it comes down to. And that, if you take this focus, it makes sense, right? You have a capability that you want to support using AI capabilities, reasoning, your large language operations, all that fun stuff. And you have that inside the target platform that actually holds the data, that holds the security rules, that holds the workflow logic, business logic, actually, right? And then you have your large scale orchestrator, the thing that you just talked about, that actually knows, okay, that's what the customer wants. Now, all I need to do is I need to establish that communication, make sure that this agent here on the other side does know what I want, give them the context, wait for the result, and then communicate back to the user, right? And potentially, if that's not on one platform but on two platforms, do the negotiation there. That's kind of how it should be. Because what you cannot do, and I think there was a big misconception from some people, I don't think you can go ahead and say, oh, this is my large data blob of all my corporate data. I don't care for business logic. I don't care for the AI needs to know the security rules and then hope that you can all do that in one engine. I don't think that's going to work. It does not scale. And with that, I do not only mean the technology scale, or the logic scale itself, building out this what should be doing, but also the resources that would be necessary to handle that. And I wanted to talk about that in the back part on the downside of AI, data centers and that kind of stuff. But I don't think just throwing unlimited capacity at data does do the trick.
Yeah, agreed. So what do you think of the data warehouses, right? Or like Databricks and stuff that's collecting a bunch of information. Is that valuable, or do you have to like set a lot of rules, or like should you even feed that into, I don't know, I guess like any of the workflows that are needing to learn from? Like, let's say you have a really robust ServiceNow environment with all the modules you can think of, right? CSM, HR, IT, ITOM, and a bunch of other like source to pay and things like that, right? You have all those in the system, and then whatever else is happening outside of that. So with the HR, HCM system, with SAP, with CRM systems and things like that, let's say all of that gets dumped into like a data warehouse. And now I want to agentify like an end-to-end workflow from sourcing to invoicing to like actually confirming the contract with the customer, like all of those things in the end-to-end workflow. I want to start thinking, okay, where do I identify what without me having to do and figure it out? Like, should we just feed that? Is that a helpful thing?
I don't think so. I don't believe it is, but again, I think this primarily from a scaling perspective. I think it's just too big. And too, well, I don't want to say unstructured, because you can structure these things properly, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's helpful, and I think it's also a waste of resources, because it only would make sense to have it like that, because, like I said, you have the special everyone comes out with their AI on their platforms right now, and you will not get rid of the business logic platforms. You will not get necessarily, I mean, I know that some people think they can, but I don't think you can get rid of just the platforms with their business logic, your HR system, your SAP, right? So you have these systems anyways, and they do have their own AI capabilities. So I do not see the purpose in taking all this data, make a copy and replicate it, right? For two reasons. A, I think it's stupid redundant, and I hate redundancies like that. There's so much that can happen, and I'm not even talking about the security aspect of that. And B, it is unnecessary. Should you I think when you design a corporate environment like that, you should know where the data is and have the necessary meta information replicated in order to determine where this should go and be processed with the capabilities that you have in the targeted systems. Use case identification, right? That's what the orchestrator should be doing. Yeah. And he should have the necessary context. For example, what totally makes sense is replicating certain knowledge stuff where this context can be learned from, right? That a centralized knowledge system that does that, be it
no problem.
with a stream or whatever technology, doesn't really matter. You can replicate it. It's probably not that much data. I talked to an AI guru, the mentor guy who taught me basically everything in ServiceNow, and I talked to him about that. And he's a big guy in terms of AI in New York, and he told me basically we can't replicate this data. It is physically impossible to pool all the data everywhere, because if everyone does that, we just don't have the technical capacities. And
yeah, I mean, this is where we burn trees and the Amazon and things like that. But I think like
we do that anyways.
Yeah, exactly. I see a comment from Theo, and this is also exactly where my mind was going, right? There's like a training aspect of the data of like, hey, do we understand what to automate and things like that? But then there's like the other aspect of like what I need access to be able to do things in a workflow. And so where in that does zero copy connectors actually fit into that? Right?
That gets exactly to the question that Theo just asked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can, Theo. So thank you for your question. You're absolutely right. You can, and they should be used where it makes sense.
Exactly, and I think the probably not for getting all of it. I think, and I do think for knowledge and things like that, I think there's value in connecting it through other means, also using like external content connectors and things like that. If it's not all in the tool and stuff like that, yeah. So all of that is available, and you don't have to replicate it, because I think replication is always not the right solution pretty much all the time.
And if you don't replicate, it still doesn't scale to like really, I mean, it scales to a degree, but not for everything. Plus, and here's where it really becomes crazy. When you make data available in more areas, and I mentioned that earlier already, and to more systems, you open yourself up for all sorts of security violations.
Yeah.
We spend so much time talking about data security and making data not available. And for people like Ramsha and myself who work with a lot of financial clients, I'm just saying one term: customer identifying information. You do not want to replicate that into some data warehouse. It's already a nightmare securing that on one platform, let alone two, or some blob where an AI can just go in. It would be a freaking nightmare. And that's what I mentioned earlier when I said you have all your security rules on your platforms, so you should be using the rules and the business logic that actually respects these rules with their agents on these platforms that know this business logic, that respect this business logic, and let them determine the outcomes based on their persona that they have been assigned. I think that's the right high-level architecture. And then like you said, for the conversational part, we can use other technologies. We don't.
Yeah. And I think this is, but to me, like, this is the bridge that we haven't yet crossed, from going from like designing workflows to like properly just starting to agentify like really big buckets of work, right? And I think, I think the thing we're talking about is like, then how do I figure out what are the use cases that are going to help me that can be? And I think that's the part that like is hard to start. That's the hard part for AI, I think. And that's where like, I think, or we need to figure out like, where's that bridge, right? Of the use case identification and things like that. How is that going to continue to, what is it connected to actually start thinking of those use cases and then eventually start building them, I guess.
I think there's two aspects to this, and I'm going to be very provocative because, that's what I do. One reason is obviously the technology. Like you said, we haven't crossed certain bridges yet. And I will say a second thing about use case identification and why we're not there. Do you think everyone knows what they want. I
No,
think
but
that's another big piece. Like,
Mhm.
I feel a lot of, and this is one of the reasons why I set this up, not to solve that issue, but just to raise the awareness that this is still a thing. We don't really know what we want this to do on a large scale. Everyone talks about zero what service desk and, deflection through AI and stuff. But at the end of the day, do we really have all these use cases identified already that actually provide value? I've talked to a couple of customer organizations about that, and they actually struggle identifying these things for themselves.
So this is where what I'm trying to get across. I think in the hype and the promise of AI, kind of moving a little bit away from the ServiceNow ecosystem, is that we shouldn't be relying on people to think of these things, And so to me, I think waiting for a person, the platform owner or the process owner or whatever, to be like, give me all the use cases. Of course they don't have it because they're bogged down in day to day. And like, there's things you can do to start identifying the use cases in the near term. But in 5 years from now, is that still the right thing to do to actually start agentifying your process and your workflow?
Yeah, it's
I think that's the bridge, right? I think I agree. Like the approach now is like, let's come up with use cases. Let's use tools at our disposal to be able to analyze what's happening, where are the bottlenecks, right? Understand that, or what things just need speeding up that maybe that are repetitive, that are happening over and over, and that's where you start. But I think even in 2 years, not in 5 years, it should be in a wholly different place. And I don't think we can think of those yet, to be honest, like, because the capability is going to be way different.
Well, let's hope it is, because
Yeah.
right now it's I mean, don't get me wrong. I have deployed a couple of agents and agentic flows, and I'm genuinely, not unhappy with them. They can do some good stuff, and they can be. It's just like you said, the hype is also over promising to a degree, and to getting back to what I just replied to Theo, let's get back to the data, because from my perspective, that's one of the biggest bottlenecks there is at the moment.
Yeah.
They have the data. Most people have the data. Most customers, most companies have the data, but they don't know the state of their data very often. I have seen in the last years, let's just go back even before the time we worked together, I have seen so many companies where data ownership was not clear, the governance of data. So Theo just mentioned the CDO. I assume that's Chief Data Officer. I would postulate that 70% of my, and I'm taking all the years of experience in consulting, 70% didn't have that role or didn't know who that was.
For me,
And
it's
that's
like more even.
conservatively. Yeah. I was being very careful. And I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
It is a big deal. And the structure of data is so important when we're talking about, and getting back to what I said at the beginning, I don't think it's intelligent. And Piotr actually said that as well, right? It is as intelligent as the fundamentals we throw into it. And if the data is not in a good shape, then it is very, very difficult to generate any sort of value. And I think that's one of the reasons why lots of people are running into this, oh, we want to do this with AI and we have the technical capabilities, but we don't get the value out of it. Why not? Is the product crap? It partially is probably not at the level like you said, but I also think that in a lot of cases, the data is just not there.
I do think what's nice with the hype with AI is as soon as people start actually even just doing a proof of concept, you very quickly start noticing that, especially with conversational stuff. It's because it's only going to summarize and spit back to you as good as whatever it can read. And I
Why
think
is that in particular in conversational stuff?
Because it's very like end user visible, you know. If
Oh,
the
right.
stuff it's reading and actually spitting out to the user, when they like, if I'm asking something about where do I do this in CRM, and then like nothing mentions CRM, it's all, you know, whatever the name of the tool is or something like that, then I have a very hard time figuring out what the heck is happening. Because whatever data or whatever prompt that I asked it, it will just spit back to me like, A, it doesn't know what I'm saying, or it will spit back to me something that's completely unrelated. And that's very easy. Like the reason it, I think, puts a lot of attention back on the data is because it's super visible to whoever you deploy it to. And then the couple of customers that I've worked with that have even just started to do POCs with like basic, even just basic chatbots, LLM-based chatbots, they have immediately turned around and said like, oh, we need a program to now go update our knowledge base. Oh, we need a program to just like either mass update stuff or check our historical data and know what to exclude. And that was the same thing that happened when I implemented predictive intelligence and this other stuff, because as soon as you looked at the data, they were like, oh my God, it's so messed up, actually. We have no patterns and all of this stuff. But then it pushed them to be like, hey, I want to get value out of it, because now I don't want my tickets to go to 1,000 people before it lands at the right team. Or I want my end users to know that they can self-service this thing. You go and fix the data. And it's just like, but you need that push of like, oh, I need to go implement something to see how bad it is before I put that attention on there. And
And that's why I think that in particular, the knowledge database is so important. Right. When we're talking data, there's a couple of things. On the one side, obviously, the actual process-related business data that is, you know, that needs to be properly structured. And free text is not necessarily helping everywhere. On the other side, it is in particular the knowledge, because the knowledge databases usually contain all sorts of helpful instructions on how to do things, and I think that's super important. And you can also use it to feed your AI agents certain information, right? That they need to go, because when an end user approaches a chatbot, he wants to know how things work, and you need to store somewhere how things work. And if you don't have that in a proper shape, and knowledge lifecycle is something that a lot of people absolutely neglect. Like, it is insane what sometimes I find in knowledge databases and customer instances. There's old stuff in there from, you know, several years ago, where they don't even have the systems anymore that are described there.
Yeah, I would say that's a little bit of the unsung hero of I think one of the benefits that a lot of companies will get from using AI, because it's hard to quantify the value of having a really good knowledge base in terms of like specifics, but it will impact everything pretty much, I think. And the fact that you can use AI to generate so much of it now, rather than waiting for a human to be like, oh, this needs a knowledge base or this needs a knowledge base. Like, I think actually agentifying a little bit more of that, and even just using data to like start speeding up and enhancing the knowledge process will have huge dividends. And I don't think people are really talking about that. That's never the first use case that anybody brings up.
Because it's not a hard value, but it's a soft value, like you just described, right? And soft values are hard to quantify.
Exactly.
So always, first thing you should be doing, knowledge center.
Yep.
Right? Go with a knowledge center. I think that's it. Coming back to ServiceNow, I mean, in the wider, at the end of the day, we talk about ServiceNow, right? And knowledge center, I think, is a big deal. But you know what also I think is a very big deal when it comes to, and I'm going back to out-of-the-box agentic flows. But also just, you know, even if you build them yourselves, is the CSDM.
Yeah, it's the basics at the end of the day.
It's the freaking basics, right? all the out of the box AI, like every other business logic within ServiceNow, relies on the fact that you use structures that ServiceNow has determined that data should be in. And whether you like the CSDM or not, it is at least a reliable structure, right? And I think it enhances your time to market with certain stuff if you use it. But that also means that if you do it right. And foundation data in particular. I just see your face and I know exactly what you're thinking.
I just don't, I don't know, I probably get exposed to a few new sets of environments and different customers all like in a year at least, you know, even sometimes in a month. And it's astounding how much foundational data is not good at customers. And I think that just breaks so much, right? So that plus CSDM, I think is the foundations. Like you can do a lot. You don't even have to have a super robust knowledge base. It helps, but as long as you have the foundations, then, and it's actually like people are sticking to it and actually using it across different tickets and using it to route things, then you don't need to, honestly, like a lot of the basic stuff that we had with predictive intelligence, like the only reason you needed that was because you weren't using a very good standard and you didn't have good services defined. So, and yeah, I agree with you, Theo.
Theo is spot on there. He is spot on, 100%. That is why we all need to do that. And
everybody should do it. Yeah,
everyone should do it. I can only recommend whoever and which role ever you have in the ServiceNow ecosystem. That's one of the certificates that everyone should have. I actually have talked with the person who organizes this stuff at Deloitte. I said, like, you know, everyone should have this one. Doesn't matter what role they have, they should have this one. In the past, I used to say, everyone do the ServiceNow fundamentals. God, I'm not sure. I'm still behind that statement.
No, I don't even know when those.
But
don't
this one,
that. But
yeah, that one is so important.
I know there was a lot of noise around it last year when it was released.
And it's not a fun training. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's very dry.
But yeah, sometimes you have to bite that lemon, and that's one of the lemons that everyone should be biting these days. Yeah, talking about the value of AI, and if you have a customer who genuinely says after deploying this is cool, we're getting our money's worth out of it.
No.
I think that's honest. And I would say the same. I think also that should not be the aim.
No, and I think you need time at the end, to be honest. I think you do need time after you deploy to actually make sure it's working properly and that it's adopted, right? So just because you installed a bunch of even out of the box skills, like, is your IT organization even using it? Are your case agents using it? Are they actually leveraging the tools out there? That's one part of it. And then, is it working properly? Does it have all of the access to the data that it needs? Does it need to be expanded? Does it need to be connected to other things? I think that you can only do after understanding how people are using it, right? And I think this is why, to me, the value conversation is a really good one. And I think it's better to have it at the level of, like, let's talk about how it plugs into the overall, like, how are we agentifying the company, the organization, rather than looking at it just for ServiceNow. Because I think it's really hard to justify it for the platform. And I think you need to go with the approach of just try a bunch of stuff. and
that is what it
see what
makes it,
lands.
and that is what makes it so difficult to determine this also, right? The fact that you would need to step back beyond the borders of your tool landscape or your particular platform, and say, okay, this is my use case overall, or these are my use cases, and that's ServiceNow does do that partially with the value templates in the AI Control Tower,
Yeah.
but it is very basic still. So I've played around with them. They are not really use case. They are use case based for AI agents, right? So you have your AI agent. You say, if I run this agent, every execution saves me so much, right? Basically, that's how the calculation. You can adjust the template, right? So you can put whatever formula behind it. But it's one platform for which you can do that. It's not if you take a step back and you have a wider orchestration in an agentic landscape, that doesn't help you really determine your overall value of your AI. It does
But
it for this.
it can.
If
Like
you
AI
do it
Control
everywhere
Tower
the
had,
same.
yeah, but I think this is why you need to start, like, if we look at the framework that AI Control Tower puts around this, right? It's like the value templates, but overall, you still need that strategy level of saying, okay, here are the kinds of things I want to achieve. In the organization, I want to achieve efficiency. I want people to stop responding to repetitive tickets and things like that. And then you drill that down further and say, okay, these are the things that are these are the agents or the skills or the whatever, the flows, basically that workflows that we're building that will ultimately feed into supporting that strategy. And then technically you can, again, this is not everything can be connected to AI Control Tower, but it can feed a lot of the usage and adoption data directly into AI Control Tower that you can then connect to the value template. So it does roll up. It probably won't have everything still, but it will get you closer. But I think the strategy conversation is truly like a thought exercise that needs to be documented well before you put anything into a system. And then you use tools to help you measure those things, like your thresholds to the objectives that you set. And then say, okay, actually, I've deployed 5 different agents for just one little like IT automation strategy that I have, right? Or this goal that I have, an objective that I have. And we're like only 20% of the way in to meeting the goals that we set for the next 2 years. So we need to do more. We need to identify more use cases. We need to start saying, okay, or we need to start doing bigger things. Like the use cases we've chosen are not making enough of a difference. And maybe there's a problem in adoption and things like that. So I think like that whole thing needs to be, in the absence of a better word, orchestrated from an organizational perspective to say, hey, this is where we're starting with of like what we want to do. And now let's figure out what can we do to actually get there. And that's when you start using the tools to actually make the value, meet it basically.
And you need to bring the data together again, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, if you do a little bit of AI governance here and a little bit of AI governance in a different tool, and every platform does their own stuff, you need to bring it together. Otherwise, you will not be able to get this end-to-end visibility of your value chain that you were just describing.
Yeah.
That's essentially it. I'm curious, ServiceNow comes out with a new version of the AI Control Tower. I heard about that today. So it's not GA yet. So let's see where that leads us. Very excited. Very excited. Talking about a little bit of the ethical aspect of AI. And again, I don't want to start a philosophical discussion, right? There is obviously a couple of different factions when it comes to talking about AI. There are people who are rationalists, like the two of us, I would say. I used to be a super technocrat, but I'm getting older, so it's not a thing anymore. Then there are AI haters, like really, and there are certain usages of AI that I do not approve of. Like wasting energy and resources to make AI slop video. I hate that shit. I really do. And I do not approve of it.
Yeah.
And then there are people who are afraid of it. And I do understand these people. What do we tell them though?
I don't know. It's a hard thing because also, actually, maybe I just finished reading, which came out last year, Careless People. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have not.
It's a book about Facebook or Meta. Sorry, I guess I should say now.
I will not read that book.
No, it's very enraging. But it's from the perspective of the policy and compliance lead who was fired a few years ago, in terms of all the things that they did at Facebook to like get them to kind of where they are. And the other thing you learn is like all these AI CEOs that have kids, don't let them access the tools that they create.
Because they know.
Exactly.
Because
and
they
so
know.
I think, of course, I mean, there's a huge ethical component to it. I think insofar as it pertains to ServiceNow, I think you can always contain a lot of it. But even there's a lot of, with customer identifying data we were talking about earlier, what you give access to, where does it go? Not just that though, but also like what kind of, concerns do you have AI look at first to be able to do the triage whenever something is sensitive? Do you really want, or like HR concerns? So if you think of employee relations kinds of cases and things like that, I personally, if I raised a case like that, I would never, ever want some random AI to know that. Because I know it's like, you don't know where it's going to end up, right? It might be published on LinkedIn next year, like, for all I know. So it's a very difficult conversation, I think. I think in what do we tell people? I mean, I think it's a movement that's happening. Like it's a change that's happening. I don't think you can really avoid it at the end of the day. All you can do is be careful and figure out where your boundaries are. For example, I've kind of given up on my boundaries with Google because Google has known all my information for, I don't know, 20 years, like maybe even longer than I'm alive now that it has AI because it can predict all this stuff and scrape everything else. But still, I mean, I'm not going around sending my personal, social security number or whatever to Google. It probably already has it, but that's a different conversation.
It does know, yeah.
Exactly.
No, I agree. There's I mean, the private stuff is even a different topic. I'm not. Some people know that I sometimes used to stream games on Twitch and stuff. I don't do that much anymore, but but I know a lot of people who still do. And I had a conversation the other day with a friend of mine, and they were like, "Oh, did you know that you need to opt out for them to allow you to use your streams, the stuff that you talk about, to train the AI?" And I was like, "Oh wow, it's Amazon after all, right?" So
but it's the same model ServiceNow follows, right?
You
have to opt out of data
you
sharing
have to opt
for
out.
AI.
But yeah, that's it's professional data and whatever. What I found fascinating is that, and they said it on stream when they introduced the change, they were like, yeah, but if we would allow people to opt in, no one would do it. Yeah, no shit. It kind of symbolizes the skepticism that comes with the territory. And I think, and that's the other ethical part of the entire conversation. It impacts people's lives, not only from the data protection perspective that you highlighted, rightfully so, but also from the workforce rationalization perspective.
Yeah.
And as much as I like to tell people, like everyone was freaking out in the 80s when ATMs came up, all the bankers are going to lose their job. The banking sector has more people employed today than in the 80s. Right? They're just doing different things. They're not handing out money with the hand anymore. At least not that as many as anymore. So I like to tell people, yeah, but you're going to be doing something different, right? I am not sure that is true to the degree.
I completely agree with you.
And I am a little worried about the societal implications of that statement and what that actually means. Can we, and that's an ethical question that we don't need to answer, I just want to bring it out. Can we as a society sustain a certain level of unemployment through AI? What will happen? Will we start eating cats and dogs? You know where I'm going with this question, right?
And there's also like UBI and other things, you know? I think there's different ways to look at this. I mean, but there's also like the resource consumption angle.
That is the next one that I wanted to just bring up, right? What's the price we are paying for, let's say, 20% unemployment? We're cutting off all the forests, we're using up all the water, and we're producing an enormous amount of heat that we already have enough of anyways. I mean, welcome everybody to the scorching, whatever it is that we call outside these days, right?
Yeah, I think we're gonna go to Mars.
And these are valid concerns. And the question is, can we reduce our consumption of it? In a professional way, we can't, right? Should we reduce our private consumption of it? I have to do this. I don't know. It's a hard question. If someone in chat wants to chime in, there's still a couple of people there. So I'm willing to take these comments while we're rambling on about it. I think ultimately, Ramsha said it earlier, and I can get fully behind it. You cannot hold this train up. There's just no way. This is going to go forward, and we need to learn how to deal with it. Ideally, we move towards a Star Trek-like use of AI, where we build our holodeck and ask them to create an Irish village that we can spend our free time in, right?
Yeah. And also, I think as we go through the journey together, right, like define what your principles are, right? Where do you draw the line? And I think as things pan out, like push in the direction of like more ethical practices with all of these things, right? That's all we can do. It's a train that's not going to stop, but I think, can it be made better, or can it be then rather than worse? You know, like it doesn't have to go to Apocalypse Now or whatever the movie was.
It should not.
Exactly.
All right. Cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you for joining me. I think, and maybe people want to, if they are rewatching that or watching it later, want to throw that in the chat. I think we should do another one, but focus more on how to actually approach a project like this. Do a little more of a practical application, and potentially give some guidance. This was a very general, this is AI, this is what you can do with it, this is what you cannot do with it. But let's do another one and maybe bring a couple more people in and talk about how to actually start something like that, and what are the thought processes that you should be starting with, structure it a little, and talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Christian. Appreciate it.
Anytime. I think I'm going back to doing these a little more, and maybe we can do one where we don't talk about AI. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think, what you would like to talk about, and then I see everyone for the next one. Have a good evening, and don't go outside, it's hot.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.